As we look around, I've always had to sit sometime and ask myself, how is it that we can embrace a natural way of life and can't understand the spiritual? Without this natural world, you would not even know there's a God. He gives you all of this in order for you to see His presence. But even with all of the knowledge, all of the visibility that we see in the universe, we still question, is there a God? It's a sad commentary for the world today when you look at how life has very little value, how moral decay is deteriorating in our society. But I ask myself, why does it come in such a way that we can't seem to grasp how to make a difference, even with our young people? So I ask God to help me understand myself a lot better, because I was even questioning my own salvation at one time, because I look around and see the pain of my people. And then God led me to speak today this message. He asked me to ask you, do you like leftovers? They can be delicious. Some people prefer leftovers, like cold pizza or cold fried chicken the next day. And some people don't like leftovers at all. But how many of us would serve leftovers to an out-of-town honored guest we have invited for dinner? Regardless of how delicious it might be, we just couldn't bring ourselves to do it. Instead, we give our very best. We drape the table with the tablecloth we had put away for special occasion. We break out the best china and silverware and glasses. I recall hearing the stories of the pastors in the South who would visit the home of members of the church. A different one each Sunday would cook dinner for the pastor. And they would set a platter of fried chicken and other meats before him, and a whole pitcher of sweet tea. The pastor selected the drumstick, the thigh, and the breast. And the children were left with the wing, the neck, and the back. And the children hated the pastor. And he was allowed to even take an extra plate home. And it wasn't until he had eaten and was full that the children were then allowed to come and eat. And by the time the pastor finished, they had leftovers. They were left to eat what the pastor left. And now I know why every time my wife cooks chicken, every piece is a drumstick. There's an old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. All too often, stuff that is in the yard sale that can't be sold today with a price tag attached is found in the dumpster tomorrow. What is excellent to you? Excellent is outstanding, it is exceptional, and it is better. The scriptures teaches us that excellent is something that honors God. For Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatever we find to do, work at it. Work at it with all your heart. And then we have mediocre, which means less than, not good enough, of little value or of little quality. The cost of serving God takes hard work. The cost of serving God takes sacrifice. There's a big difference in doing a pretty good job on something and doing an excellent job. Because excellent takes a lot more time. A commitment of excellence, or the lack thereof, is often shows up mostly in the way you do the little things in your life. Jesus taught us that we have to be faithful over the little things in life before we can appreciate and receive the bigger blessings. Doing these excellent things have to have a daily commitment. Suppose you build a new house. When the house is finished, you plant a flower garden and landscape the yard and manicure the lawn very beautifully. Everyone in the neighborhood would be talking about that new house and that manicured lawn. The excellence will be seen, but then the neighborhood will be talking about it. Everybody will be rejoicing and looking at that beautiful home. But it's not too long before your work began to deteriorate, because the walls of the house eventually is going to need painting. The grass is going to need to be cut. The weeds are going to have to be pulled from the flower bed. You can't ignore the current conditions in your home, because if you're going to maintain excellence, it's an ongoing work. It is something that you must continuously do. If you don't, you lose the edge, really. And once you lose the edge, guess what? The next week becomes more of a challenge than the week before. The same thing is true in your lives and our church. Some people are satisfied with just getting by. They are quick to say, it looks good to me. They are living from paycheck to paycheck, and they believe that you can fake it till you make it. What God has blessed us with deserves one thing. It deserves excellence, not mediocrity. But someone once said, mediocrity is nothing but excellence in the mind of someone that is mediocre. Striving for excellence simply means making every effort in your life and preparation and execution to the very best you can be, and to give God your best. Giving that to the Lord. But they forgot, as some of you obey, it is better than to sacrifice. These priests and people were more concerned about keeping what they had than giving what God had asked for, their best. See, their hearts were not in it any longer. Some of you come to church, your heart is not here spiritually. You come out of tradition because you were said you were raised in the church. See, their hearts were no longer in it. They were still coming to church, but it was just a meaningless ritual to them. They had accepted mediocrity into their lives, and their leaders did nothing more than they did. See, the priests wanted to be popular. They even twisted the laws to gain friends, so that the people would keep food on their table and keep respect for them. Isn't it amazing how a thief hates another thief? Leaders who have integrity and character will have their enemies, but they will always have their respect. The unsaved people have proven time and time again by people in the church who practice but don't practice what they preach. See, the people thought that God didn't care because the preachers and the priests didn't care. After all, they were middle-class people, and they had worked hard for what they had. They had high taxes, they had bills to pay, and they just didn't have enough cash. And the priest could have easily went to God and said, you know, I'm not responsible. It's not my fault they're bringing you all this garbage. We're just sacrificing what they give us. But God don't buy that. God knows that your income comes before your bills, and therefore he holds you responsible for what you give. God holds me responsible, just like I'm standing here to tell this congregation that you cannot slip into ritualistic religion and expect God to give you his best. See, God knows that your income comes before your bills. It's all come back to the Word of God. He makes it very clear what he wants, and you must respond accordingly.